Hi, Kimberly Buffington here. Thank you so much for watching the video from last night and for joining this 3-day transformation journey. So today's day one, and I'm doing this short video for you to get you off to a really good start. We're going to talk about 3 different aspects of transformation that will help you press down your journey a little bit farther. And the first one is going to be meditation. So I mentioned last night on the video that I did for the opening of this 3-day journey that meditation had actually saved my life, and it did. It truly did. It made all the difference. And so I'm going to talk to you about a specific form of meditation that I want you to engage in for the next 3 days. There's different types of meditation. There's spiritual meditation, which is what we're going to do. And then there's also mind meditation, which trains your mind in various areas and strengthens your mind more on a rational and intellectual level. And it's actually awesome to do that training and train your brain as much as it is to train your spirit. So we're going to focus on training our spirits, though, through spiritual meditation. And I'm going to teach you the form of spiritual meditation that I have used now for a decade. And it was particularly helpful for me when I was going through my very, very difficult time in life. Those first 5 years were extremely hard. And this meditation was what gave me the basis for finding my purpose in life, for understanding who I was, what I meant to God, and getting a real clear sense of God's love for me. And then my purpose emerged out of that basis and foundation of love that I found. And I got that grounding through hours and hours of spiritual meditation. Now, I will say this to you because I want you to know I'm an expert in this. I'm not saying it to set a standard. I have done spiritual meditation over 6,000 hours now in the last decade. Like I said, I'm not saying that to make you feel like, oh my gosh, I could never attain that goal. I didn't set out to attain that goal. I set out to find peace for myself and to find a strengthening in my spirit. And I dedicated myself to it. And I had the time and was able to dedicate that kind of time to it. Most of those hours, a lot of those hours were spent in those first 5 years when I spent a lot of time, as I say, on the floor in the presence of God. And so I'm going to share with you now that it's very simple. It's really a simple process, and it's fairly easy to get started, and I'll talk to you briefly at the end of this video about some of the trouble spots you may have and how to overcome them. So in this email, I'm going to include a link to Kimberly and Alberto Rivera's soaking album called Captured. And what I want you to do for the next 3 days, that album is 51 minutes long. What I want you to commit to is to laying down on the floor, laying down on the bed, whichever one, just laying down, so that you're in a restful, resting position, and then listen to this album through once a day for every day of this 3-day transformation journey. And as you rest and listen, what you're going to hear is Kimberly singing, and she does prophetic responsive singing, and these songs are captured in different services or conferences that she does them at. And so this album is a series of songs that were created over time that are around a particular theme. And so as you go through and be aware that she sings sometimes in spiritual language, she sings sometimes in Spanish, and sometimes she just sings and makes sounds, musical sounds. So don't let that throw you off. The music is not there for you to enjoy from like going to a concert standpoint. It's there to set a mood and a tone, and to help you enter into the presence of God and listen to God. And Kimberly does that very, very well. She's one of the best that's producing this kind of music. That's why I'm using this album for these 3 days. Alberto and Kimberly have a lot of albums, and they have a lot of different themes with those albums. So if you enjoy this process and you actually enjoy their music, I encourage you to go to their website, Alberto and Kimberly Rivera. I think it's that.com, and look at some more of their music. You can sample different songs and purchase some albums that you can use during your soaking times. For most of those 6,000 hours, I predominantly used Alberto and Kimberly's music because it had a way of taking me into the presence of God. Now, the purpose of going into the presence of God is to listen. And so part of what I want you to do is to put yourself in a place of listening and just putting yourself in the presence of God. And often when I was starting into this meditative process, I would say, I am choosing to lay down and listen to what you have to say to me. So it's not prayer. It's not you reciting or saying anything to God. It's you really quieting yourself and listening to what God has to say, and trusting that as thoughts begin to come into your head, as you begin to sense things in your body, that those are being sent from God to you to communicate with you. So I'm going to ask you for the next 3 days to listen to the captured album one time a day. You pick what time of day you want it to be. It needs to be in a quiet space. You need to be comfortable and restful, and at a time when you can really disconnect and just rest. I also recommend that you either get a journal or you put a piece of paper and a pen next to you, because as Spirit begins to speak to you, you are going to want to write down what's being said, because it is going to change your life. In those moments when you're listening to a song and the Spirit of God begins to speak to you on a very personal level, and you're already moved by the music because you already feel like this song was written with you in mind, and then God starts layering on what He is saying over you, you want to write this down, because it is transformational and it will change your life, and you will hold on to these words like they were the words of a lover for you, because they mean that much, because they bring that much transformation. So let me help you deal with one thing that's difficult to do when you're starting with a meditative practice, and that is dealing with a distracted mind. So I have this problem, right? Like my mind just runs 90 to nothing. I know you guys find that hard to believe, but it does. This mind runs 90 to nothing all day long, and it barely turns off to sleep. And so what I had to do was I had to discipline myself to slow myself down, to choose to be slow, to choose to relax, to choose to turn this off and let go of everything else in the day that needed to happen, so that I could focus on my relationship with God and really hearing from Him. So what I did was I put a pen and paper beside me, because I would get 2 minutes in or less to this meditative process, and then all of a sudden I'd be making the grocery list. I'd be ordering the tasks for the afternoon and going, I have to do this, and getting everything planned out. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I don't want to be thinking about all this. And so what I would do was I would write whatever came into my mind. I would just write it down. Just write on a piece of paper and then lay back down. And the next time it happened, I'd sit up, write down, lay back down, and go right back to my meditative practice. And over time, what happened was my mind got to the point where it could relax, because it realized that once meditation was over, it would remember all that stuff, and the day would go on just as normal. But in the moment, it helped me empty my mind of that spinning garbage, the stuff that's just floating around in there all the time, that's in the background, that really doesn't show up until you start to quiet yourself and listen to God. That's when you realize how active your mind really is. And so I would just write it down, and as soon as I wrote it down, it was gone. I learned that it was gone, and